Hello everyone, today I want to introduce a little technique that I personally use often, and that is also commonly used in many advanced face reading practices. Many people, after learning Dushu or even Bazi and studying a lot of things, will notice something. If you work really hard and try to learn as much as possible, memorizing tons of materials and reciting all kinds of information, you'll start to realize that when you actually get a chart in front of you, you don't even know what to say to others or where to start explaining. Should you go through all 12 palaces one by one, or how should you begin to interpret it? We often see this kind of situation on social media platforms, like in many astrology fan groups on Facebook. There are a lot of free fan groups, and people often post things like, "This is my chart," and then, "Recently, I'm about to divorce my husband. I wonder if any of the masters here could give me some advice." Then there will be a bunch of people commenting below, basically helping to look at this chart for them. I believe that many of my own followers are also members of various fan groups like these. I don't know if you've noticed this kind of situation too. Sigh, this person is asking about issues between her and her husband, but then someone in the comments will say, "Oh, it's because of such and such situation." So they'll say things like, "That's why your health isn't good," or "It's because of some major clash somewhere." I know, right? There are a lot of technical terms, and then they tell her these things. And this year, the main issue is work not going smoothly, but when someone is asking about her husband's feelings, why are you discussing her health or her job? So a lot of answers like this are completely irrelevant to the actual question. There are only a few reasons for this kind of problem. One is that the person answering doesn't really grasp the situation, or they simply can't see the real issue from the chart, so they just write down everything they know as much as possible. That's why we see so many similar answers like this. Of course, there are also all kinds of mystical or supernatural explanations, like saying you and your husband have unresolved karma from a past life, and so on. With all these different kinds of answers, we can actually tell from them whether this person is a professional teacher or whether they've really addressed the question the client actually wants to ask. In reality, when we're helping clients with fortune telling, or after you've studied for a while and want to help your friends with their readings, you'll definitely encounter situations like this. Maybe the question they ask is something you haven't learned yet, or you don't know how to answer, or you lack experience, or for various other reasons you just don't know how to approach it. Here's an important point. We want to share a little trick with you. This trick is actually something we teach our students when they're about to graduate, especially those who want to start their own practice. We pass on this little tip, which addresses a common bad habit among Chinese learners. We tend to think that by gathering a huge amount of information, you'll be able to make accurate judgments. As a result, people can't help but read all kinds of books, looking at different schools of thought, reading this one and that one, collecting information from everywhere. It's as if, after you've organized and memorized a lot, you'll be able to read charts accurately. But is that really the case? Of course, we can't deny that. Just like learning a language, the more vocabulary you memorize, the larger your word bank, and the more resources you have at your disposal, the better your command of the language will be. But does that necessarily mean that you can write a good article? Actually, not necessarily. If it were that simple, we often remind everyone that if your approach to learning metaphysics is just about collecting all kinds of information, then this way of thinking can easily be replaced by AI. Who's best at gathering information? It's AI. The entire job of AI is to collect all sorts of information from vast databases and then organize it. No matter what you do, you can't compete with it. It's impossible to surpass it because the database it holds and its ability to organize information are far beyond what humans can do. That's why in our courses, we often tell everyone that all metaphysical reasoning must be based on inference, not memorization. The reason behind this is exactly that. No matter how much you memorize, you can't out-memorize a computer. So when our students are about to start their own practice, we always share a little tip with them. That is, when a client sits down, of course we can tell what they want to ask. But where does this little trick come from? Actually, this tip comes from the positions of the malefic stars and artistic talents on the natal chart. Why? Because the malefic stars on the chart represent the areas where our emotions are most likely to be stirred. If you're coming for a fortune-telling session, it's definitely because your emotions have been affected. Otherwise, why would you come for a reading, right? There must be some reason. If you didn't know what to do, why else would you come for a fortune-telling session? It's not like someone wins the lottery, becomes rich, and then visits a fortune teller just to ask, "Why did I win the lottery?" That almost never happens. By looking at the malefic star's positions, you can often find where the problem is. The artistic talent star shows a kind of vacancy or lack, so the house where it appears is usually where you feel something is missing. Of course, a vacancy doesn't always mean something bad. Don't think about things this way. This is also a common mistake, assuming that a vacancy means you need to work harder or that you haven't done enough. Some people already have 3 wives, yet they still feel something is missing, right? They're still chasing after a 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th. So can you really say that just because there's a vacancy, it means they don't have any romantic luck? Of course not. So generally speaking, the positions of the inauspicious stars and the transformation stars are where a person needs to explore, understand, and solve problems, as well as the areas where they want to figure out what to do. That's why we often say that sometimes, even if you've learned and memorized a lot, it's better to focus on mastering one particular skill and really study it thoroughly. Many students, when they're about to start their own practice, we often share a little tip with our students, which is that if you just look at the position of the gyro star, you can know exactly what a person is worried about and also understand the real reason behind their worries. So today we'll give everyone a simple introduction on how to read just the gyro star. When looking at the gyro star, you don't need to look at Qingyang, Mars, Cold Star, or Huajing. Just focus on the position of the gyro star itself. We'll be able to know what exactly the person wants to ask, what their real question is. Why? Because the gyro star represents that inner struggle we feel when we don't know how to make a decision. The reason you don't know how to decide is definitely because you might be able to choose A or B or C. Or maybe you don't like any of A, B, or C, so you start to hesitate, not knowing what to do. Or perhaps you don't know how to proceed with something or how to face it. That's the emotional state the gyro star brings us. So when we look at this part of the chart, we'll find that in our natal chart, there's what we call the natal gyro, the major period gyro, the annual gyro, and the minor period gyro. There's also the monthly gyro and even the daily gyro. Of course, if you're new to my channel and aren't sure how to calculate the major period, annual, or monthly gyros, you can search for those videos on my channel. There are videos explaining how to look at these, and I'll leave the link here for everyone to find. He said to add the link, haha. You can look for it, and then you'll know how to calculate the monthly and daily gyros, as well as where the gyro is located. Okay, we often say that the interpretation of each star should correspond to its house, and the interpretation of each house should correspond to the natal chart. In other words, your gyro star is your natal gyro star, which means the position of the gyro star you were born with. Basically, it represents the things you care about most in your life. Because you care, you might not always know exactly how to make choices or what to do in these situations. Conversely, these are also the things you need to explore further. Or it's the position of the gyro star that you can't resist, the house it's located in, that's how it works. And because this is your natal chart, which represents your whole life, it will often follow you throughout your life. If this gyro star is in your marriage house, relationships are often an area where you don't know how to handle things. If it's in the career house, then work and the workplace are often areas where you don't know how to make choices or how to handle things. So for people whose natal gyro star is in the career house, most of the questions they ask are related to work, while those with it in the marriage house are related to relationships. Now, if it's in the life house, which represents all 12 houses, usually this person is indecisive and hesitant about many things in their personality, so they don't know how to make decisions. If it's in the fortune and virtue house, then of course it's about how they make money, the ways their company or job brings in income, and they may also have some confusion about their own spirit and soul. If it's in the parental house, it's about their relationship with family members. If it's in the children house and they have kids, then it's about their relationship with their children. If they don't have kids, it could also be about their relationship with family members. Or perhaps, since the fields and farmland house is also a treasury, they might feel like they can never save money. If it's in the wealth report house, then of course when it comes to financial management, they often don't know what the best approach is. If it's in the travel and movement house, it might affect their interpersonal relationships, or perhaps there are often things in their heart that they just can't make decisions about. If it's in the siblings house or the parents house, and especially if it's in the parents house, it could actually mean that their relationship with their father is quite good. If it's in the siblings house, it means the relationship with the mother is quite good, or perhaps they expect affection from their father or mother, or they find it hard to refuse their parents' requests. If it's in the friend's house, it represents siblings of the opposite gender, or it could be about friends. It's easy for them to feel that they've done a lot for their friends, but unfortunately, they don't get much in return. Of course, this is the nature of the natal gyro star. As for the position of the natal gyro star, the people who come to ask about these things are usually adults. The vast majority of people who come for fortune telling are here to ask about their own issues. So if you see that their natal gyro star is in the life palace, the spouse palace, the career palace, the fortune palace, the wealth palace, the children palace, or the property palace, the things they want to ask about are nothing more than matters of love, money, and work. To put it this way, since the life palace represents the 12 palaces, by the time someone is old enough to seek fortune telling, the main focus of their life is naturally on relationships and work. Therefore, they will definitely be unsure about how to make these decisions. If their star is in the spouse or career palace, it relates to relationships or work. In the wealth palace, it's about money. In the fortune palace, it's not just money, but also their life and indecision. You might think, isn't this true for almost everyone who comes for fortune telling? Aren't these the usual questions? Well, that's not necessarily the case. If their gyro star happens to be in the siblings palace, or the welfare palace, or the parents palace, it doesn't mean they're coming to ask about their mom, dad, or friends. At least most people usually don't come to ask about their friends. So what if it's in one of these palaces? So how should we look at it in this case? There are a few key points to consider here. The first key point is that this is the natal gyro star, right? So if the natal gyro star falls into one of these palaces that aren't directly related to the person themselves, then you need to take a closer look. For example, if his natal gyro star falls in the siblings palace, but this siblings palace happens to correspond to a certain palace in the annual chart, if it happens to be the wealth palace for the year, then what he's asking about is money. If it happens to be the career palace for the year, then what he's asking about is work. So when I find myself unable to clearly see or determine my own position in the natal chart, that's the moment when I turn to and examine the annual chart for further insight. Now, if you ask, teacher, what if this particular person happens to have exactly the same palace appearing in both the natal chart and the annual chart? So what should we do in this situation? At this point, we can look at the major fate period, see which palace is indicated by the major fate period. Now, if everything just happens to align, natal chart, annual chart, and major fate period, all are not in your own palace, but instead in palaces like servants, siblings, parents, and so on, what should you do? You still have the minor fate period to look at, and if by chance even that, when the major fate period, annual fate, and minor fate period all fall into these kinds of palaces, where does the problem lie? At this point, we can take a look. Where the annual fate's life palace falls within the natal chart, that's usually the issue the person is asking about, and it's also what they're most concerned about. So, by using this technique, as long as I know where the natal gyro star is, once I sit down and see where it is in the natal chart, and then look at which palace it corresponds to, we can pretty much figure out what the person wants to ask about. Let me summarize this for everyone again. We just need to look at the natal gyro star. See what position it's in, and then match it to two things. First, if the natal gyro heart corresponds to a palace that you can control, for example, if it's in the spouse palace, it's related to relationships. If it's in the career palace, it's related to work. If it's in the travel palace, it's related to interpersonal relationships. If it's in the life palace, it means there are many things you can't decide for yourself. In the wealth palace, it's related to money. The fortune palace is also related to money, or it could be connected to your mental state. If it's in the friends palace, siblings palace, parents palace, or subordinates palace, for example, then in these cases, you need to look at whether it's the annual luck and which palace the annual luck happens to be in. Then you look at the palace for that year. If your natal chart's major luck, the annual luck, and the minor luck all happen to be in these palaces we've mentioned, it's relatively hard to make a direct judgment. At this point, you need to see which palace your annual luck has fallen into, because the palace where your annual luck lands is often what you'll care about most this year. By using this method, usually when someone sits down with us, we can tell, for example, that you're actually here because you have relationship issues and want to ask about something related to that. To get even more detailed, we then look at which star the gyro star is paired with. For example, if the gyro star is together with the dance star, and the dance star represents your values regarding money, and it happens to fall in your spouse palace. So this person often, in terms of emotions, there will often be some friction or disagreements over money values and financial priorities with their partner, which can potentially lead to problems or challenges in their relationship. And if this happens to be in the annual spouse palace, then this year, he and his partner are likely to have some friction again because of differing values regarding money. By using this simple method, just relying on a single Loshu star and its corresponding palace position, we can tell if he wants to get a tattoo. Similarly, this is the natal chart. If it appears directly on the annual chart, then you can directly tell him, hey, are you having frequent interpersonal issues at work this year? Why? Because in this year's annual chart, the Guanlu Palace has a Luoshu star in it. Moreover, next to the Luoshu star are stars related to interpersonal relationships, such as the Tianxiang star, and among the stars, those peach blossom stars that belong to the water element are also related to interpersonal relationships. As long as these are placed together in the work sector, it means there will be some interpersonal issues at work. By using this method, we can quickly identify the problem without needing to memorize a lot of information. You can immediately know where the issue lies for each main star. Each main star corresponds to certain values and issues within our own hearts. Whenever it is placed together with the Luoshu star, it also represents that the Luoshu star is influencing some of its values. In this part, we can simply use the combination of the Luoshu star and the main star. We can deduce many detailed matters from this. If you want to know more in-depth information, we will explain this section to everyone in our members-only channel.